First, we'd like to show you where are the main components. Starting with CPU, Central Processor Unit. It is placed here on the right side, looking from the front. On the left, we find GPU, Graphics Processor Unit. 90% of malfunctions concern the GPU. Errors such as FreeRAD or E74 are called solders under the GPU. We see RAM memory units around the GPU, 4 on the top and 4 beneath the board. RAM units can be to blame for some of the errors. Our guide shows you how to reball these small MEM units. In the top left corner we see the bridge. Bridge is a steady chip, it does not break very often. Here we can see a HENA chip. It is placed right in front of the cooling fans, so it does not get broken. Before getting to the real thing, we'll show you how to perform the rebelling. Try to memorize the sequence of the actions, because most of them has to be done quickly, one after another, which limits your reaction time. First, we will heat up the bottom of the board using the lower infrared lamps. These lamps are in the bottom of the BGA rework station. The board will be placed on the metal tripod. Use the upper temperature sensor to measure the upper temperature around the GPU unit. When it reaches 140 C, use the upper infrared lamp to heat the GPU from the upper side. Next, the properly heated GPU will be gently lifted. The lifting action will be performed using vacuum lifter. Which you can see to the left side of the station. GPU will be sucked to the tip of the vacuum lifter. Vacuuming is a very simple step. Look at the GPU in my hand. The unit is easily sucked to the vacuum lifter. You can see some metal pad instead, but be careful. You can easily detach the micro components from the GPU surface, because the GPU will be very hot at this stage of the process. We recommend using the vacuum lifter. It is the most secure way. After removing the GPU, clear the old solder balls from the pot. We have to do that when the board is still hot. To remove the old solder, use a resistive soldering iron. The iron has to be at least 460 C hot. Weaker irons are no good for removing the lead-free solders. Lead-free solders has much higher melting temperature. We have to mix the old solder with the lead solder first. And then we will use solder wick to remove the remains. The iron tip will be placed on the wick and dragged through the spot. This is how the removing process generally looks. Memorize to prepare a cooler fan. The GPU unit has to be cooled down. BGA chipsets should not be exposed to heat for a longer period of time. The cooler fan should solve the problem. First, the board has to be placed properly on the tripod of the station. Pay attention, it is important to place the board correctly. It has to be supported from sides as well as from the bottom. Otherwise, the board will bend. Bending can cause permanent damage to the board. We have to adjust the tripod. Remember to place the support bars underneath. With no bars, the board will bend middle down, causing damage. The height of the bars can be easily adjusted. The heated board will rest on the tips of the bars. Support bars are the very basic elements necessary with every reballing. Let's take out for a second. It will be easier to adjust the tripod. The corners of the board will be supported with the side pads of the tripod. Now side holders can be freely adjusted. We have to set them in the correct position. Place the board, each corner has to be supported. Now let's pay attention, the unit which is to be removed has to be placed directly above the lamp. This rule applies to any other rework station. So let's adjust the position to fulfill the condition. Now the GPU is in the area will be equally heated. As you can see, it is placed correctly. When it is set, block the side holders. Take a look at the side holders. The board has to be supported regularly. On each and every corner. Everything is set. Now remove the board once again. Place the support bars, but remember, don't cover the GPU underneath area. As you can see, they are placed out of the GPU area. This region has to be heated regularly. The bars should not cover it. Now we must adjust the height of the tips of the bars. The height of the bar tips is important. The board has to be supported regularly and firmly. Moreover, the tips cannot directly touch the underneath elements of the board. Place the board on the tripod. Check if the bottom support is right by pressing the board. Try to feel if the board bends. If so, adjust the height. If you feel a resistance, it means that the board is placed correctly and it will not bend. Heating starts with the bottom lamps. Set the temperature to 280 degrees C. 280 degrees C is the perfect bottom temperature for Achi. For other rework stations, the bottom temperature may vary according to various output power. However, the upper temperature is far more important. Turn on the bottom infrared lamps. The bottom temperature will grow until it reaches 280 degrees C. The upper temperature is most important to us. The upper sensor will measure the temperature in the area where the GPU is located. It should touch with the board. As you can see, the upper temperature has reached 100 degrees C. Now we will squeeze some water flux around the GPU unit. Squeeze small amounts, make it all the way round. Observe how the flux melts and floats under the unit. Remember to place the sensor back to the spot. Let's get back to observing the upper temperature. As you can see, it reaches 150 degrees C. 150 degrees C. Now remove the sensor and place the upper lamp 4 to 6 centimeters above the GPU. Using a wooden toothpick, check if the processor moves. Now the time plays a great role. With lead-free solder, it should take at least 120 seconds. If you notice that the unit moves, stop the heating and suck out the GPU. When it reaches 120 seconds, check instantly if the GPU moves. Suck out the processor right after turning off the lamps. Place it on a panel. The panel should be placed nearby the cooler fan. Let's squeeze some jelly water on the motherboard processor spot. Now we will use the previously heated iron and some lead solder. Form a solder ball and drag it through the spot. Collect the old solder with the ball and then drag it on the tape nearby. Now use some 3S solder wick. The tip of the iron should be covered with solder. Press the wick with the tip of the iron and drag it gently through the spot. Now all the solder remains will be removed. This step needs to be performed cautiously. It requires experience, so at first try to practice on our previously damaged boards. This is how it should be cleared. The surface is free of the old solder. As you can see, none of the spots has been damaged. When you finish with the board, turn on the fan of the rework station. Set it to cooling mode to cool down the board. Now the fan cools down the whole board. Now let's remove the old solder from the bottom of the GPU. It has to be installed in a BGA tripod. The BGA tripod will hold the unit steadily. Keep the cooler fan in a close area. During the clearing, the unit has to be cooled down several times. The solder will be cleared using resistive soldering iron. Place the unit into BGA tripod. Check if it's steady. Squeeze the jelly water on the unit's surface. Such small amounts should be fine. Distribute the flux on the surface. Let's take a closer look at the whole process. First, we have to mix the remains with lead solder. Starting with sides, drag a small ball through the surface. When one side is cleared, use the fan to cool the unit down. High temperature for a longer period can easily damage the unit. So it's best to take all precautions. Do likewise with the remaining sides. Remember about the fan.